If some Christians are right, that means you and I never need to obey the speed limit again. Welcome back to Wretched. What am I talking about? I'm talking about some Christians who believe that the government was actually not put in place by God, but was put in place by you and me. Why? We have a constitution that says we're by the people and for the people. Therefore, ultimately, the people are the government, and the civil servants serve and work for us. Is that correct? Yes, in a sense, it is correct. However, there are some people who are then extrapolating that to mean, therefore, we don't need to submit to the government when the government officials do things we don't like. Why? Because they work for us and we are in authority over them. The results of that, in my opinion, unbiblical, chaotic, and sinful. Case in point, speeding laws. This is not an absurd exaggeration. I think this is a reductio ad absurdum. If indeed you and I are the authorities over government because of our U.S. Constitution, and we don't have to actually submit to them because we put them there, imagine speeding laws. You're driving down a road, you get pulled over, but you think, this is kind of ridiculous. That speed limit is too low. So officer, whoosh, whoosh, I'm not paying. Why? Because I'm the government, I'm the authority, and you are a civil servant who serves me. You say, that's ridiculous. And I agree with you, and that is my concern with a large growing number of evangelicals who are saying that the U.S. government is we, therefore we don't actually submit to the authorities. What's the problem with this? I think the problem with this is not understanding what the Bible clearly says about institutions and who puts them there. I would suggest to you that just because you and I vote and put the government into authority, that doesn't mean that we then have authority over the government. We voluntarily put them there, and then they have power over us, which is exactly what the Bible teaches. Romans 13, verse 4. For the government is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Regardless of how a government gets into place, you and I are very clearly commanded to submit to it and do what we are told. Yes, there can be some exceptions. We mentioned it. If the government says, sin, do this, commit adultery. Everybody needs to commit adultery. We go, no, we can't do that. But if the government has really bad laws on no-fault divorce, we can't overthrow the government, and we can't say, no, we're not going to be obedient to you in anything because we think that you're being a bad government. Why? Because the Constitution says that we are the government. Now, I believe that flies directly into the face of what Romans 13 teaches, 1 Peter 2, and Titus 3 teaches. And the results, if we do not understand this rightly, are going to be chaos. If you and I slap down that card every single time the government does something that we don't like. No, I'm sorry, we're not going to submit to you, government, because we are the government. Can you imagine the chaos? Can you imagine the number of people who wouldn't pay any taxes? Do you know that we don't have the right to not pay our taxes? We complain about whatever it is these days, 30, 33, it could be 90, it could be 120%. And Christian, we can work within the government realm to make a correction to that because we don't like it and vote somebody else in. But that does not mean that we can rebel and become vigilantes. Last verse from Romans 13. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. Christian, may I encourage you, get your realms of authority straight in your own mind because you do not want to be sinning.